Hello and welcome to today's presentation. Today's title is Content Inc. and I'm going to be talking about 6 ways you can find and build an audience. And this is a new model based on my book. My name is Joe Polizzi with the Content Marketing Institute. Thanks for being along for the ride. I hope you enjoy the presentation as we go through today. Now, my goal here is to give you one thing that you can take away with you. I'm going to talk about 6 steps, and at the end of this presentation, I actually have a takeaway slide of 10 different things that I think you're going to get out of the presentation. But I want you to look throughout this presentation and really look for that one thing that you can leverage in your business as soon as possible to actually build that audience, look at a content marketing approach, and make a difference in your business right away. So we're going to get right down to it. I'm going to kind of start with an introduction. So I've got about a 5-minute introduction, and then I'm going to go through the Content Inc. model as we go. So let's just go back to the website, right? It was great in the mid-90s. We were able to create a website. We had infinite storage to take all of our sales material, all of our product and service information, and put it on the web. And the thought was, if we do this properly, we can actually attract more customers to us. And then we had perhaps the second greatest invention for marketers of all time, social media. So we had the opportunity to create blogs and wikis and videos and, God help us all, Snapchat, and we can put our information out on the web through social, and the belief was, if we do this properly, we can attract and retain more customers. But unfortunately, nobody cares about our stuff, right? Nobody cares about your products and services except for a very small portion of the buyer cycle. So we've had to learn to do things a little bit differently than maybe we initially wanted to, and we've got to start thinking a little bit differently. Why? Well, if you look at before 1990, I love this in the infographic. So before 1990, there were only 8 ways that consumers could get information at all. Well, today there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways your customers can get information, and that means the control goes to them. It goes to your customers that have a 24/7 device with them in the form of a smartphone at every minute of the day, and they can afford to ignore our information. They can ignore us. So the power in the past was with big media, big advertising budgets, and media companies. Well, now the power has shifted to consumers, which means we have to focus on more relevant, more valuable information in order to break through all that clutter and actually get somebody's attention as we go. And that's why content marketing has really taken off. So the whole idea behind content marketing is, how do we create valuable, relevant, and compelling information on a consistent basis to a very targeted audience in order to drive some customer behavior? And the key to this whole thing is we're trying to build audiences. We're trying to build an asset of amazing information over time where we can actually build that audience asset for the organization so that we can see profitable behavior down the road. Here's a Google Trends chart of content marketing since 2005, and you'll see that content marketing, if content marketing was a stock, we'd all want to own it, we'd all be super rich, and there's more and more interest in the approach of content marketing. And according to Content Marketing Institute Marketing Prof research that we do every year, and you can see the short link there that you can get all of our research for free, but basically 9 out of 10 businesses use some form of content marketing. Now, they may not know exactly what content marketing is to them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is great because we've got more businesses that believe in the idea of delivering valuable information to customers that we can change and enhance behavior in some way. So we're seeing a lot of organizations, small and large, gravitate towards content marketing. The problem is, and this is what keeps me up at night, we have a 30% success rate. So when we ask the same people, the 9 out of 10 that are doing some form of content marketing, only 3 out of 10 say that they're actually successful at content marketing, and this is tragic, and we need to do a better job than this. Well, what are the reasons? Why are we only successful at a 30% rate? Well, we're still thinking about campaigns instead of ongoing consistent programs. So content marketing is a marathon, not a sprint. It has to go over time. We're going to talk about time and patience being an important part of a content marketing approach. Still, brand talk, we're still talking way too much about our products and services. And at the bottom here, most organizations have no documented content marketing strategy. They have no strategy, and they have no clear goals for what they're trying to get out of this. And we're really treating content like advertising, and we can't afford to do that anymore. We've got to think differently about how we communicate with our customers. And I really do believe there's a better way. We have to think a little bit differently about how we do this. There is a better way. And this is what I want you to keep in mind throughout the rest of this presentation as we go through the 6 steps. First, we want to build an audience, then we want to monetize it. So often businesses want to get a lead in, they want to get a name, and they want to monetize it as soon as they possibly can. But what we really want to do is build a loyal relationship with an audience first, and then we can look to monetize that in some way. And basically, my most recent book, Content Inc., I have a personal goal to write a book every 2 years. I wrote Epic Content Marketing in 2013, and I was trying to think, okay, well, what book can I write in 2015? And I wanted to talk about what we were able to accomplish at Content Marketing Institute by building an audience first and then monetizing that audience second. And we were able to go out and do dozens and dozens of case studies, find dozens of case studies throughout the world about these really amazing entrepreneurs and startups and small businesses that were able to go out and build an audience in their particular content niche and then monetize that audience. And in a lot of these cases, you're looking at multimillionaires here that were doing very successful. And what was interesting as we went in and we found out their success secret in each one of these cases, we went and then reverse engineered it back. So we looked at, okay, here's the end result. Here's how successful they've been. And we said, okay, can we reverse engineer this and see if there's anything that these companies were doing similarly that we can take away, and maybe there's a model. And actually, this was the exciting part of the research. We absolutely did find a model. Although some of the timetables were not exact, every one of the people that you just saw in every one of the case studies we talked about in Content Inc., everyone followed these same 6 steps. So what I'm going to do now is go through each of these 6 steps so you can figure out how you can build what we call the Content Inc. model, or base your strategy on this Content Inc. model so you can build a loyal audience and then you can monetize that over time. So the first step is the sweet spot. Well, what is the sweet spot? Sweet spot is the intersection between, on the right side, something that you're super passionate about, something that you just gets you going in the morning. It takes time to build a content platform, so it has to be something that you're passionate about. Or if you're a larger company, it might be around a customer pain point. So what's keeping your customers up at night? Something very specific from a content niche standpoint. And on the other side, a knowledge of skill area that you actually have an authority to communicate about. So we're going to talk a little bit about what your authority might be, a knowledge of skill area that your organization has that a lot of other companies might not have. So let me give you a case study. One of my favorite cases is Mr. Andy Schneider. Andy Schneider is known as the Chicken Whisperer, and I'm going to tell you a little story about this. So Andy was at a flea market. This is in 2008 or so, and he goes to the flea market and he sees there's some chickens. And he's like, looks at those chickens. He says, I think I want to raise those chickens in my backyard. So before he buys the chickens and takes them home into his little, he lives in an area right outside of Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. And he says, okay, calls his wife and makes sure his wife is cool with it before he comes home, brings the chickens home, and then realizes, I have no idea how to raise chickens in my backyard. I'm going to kill these chickens. What do I do? So he goes to the knower of all things, Google, and starts typing in, well, what do I need to do to raise chickens in my backyard? And realized there wasn't really a lot of good information on Google. So keeps the chickens alive for that day and then starts to call farmers and starts to call experts in the industry on how to actually raise chickens in your backyard and really make this thing work. And he starts becoming an expert in raising chickens in your backyard in an industry called backyard poultry. And then slowly things started to go where his neighbor looks over the fence and say, Andy, I see you're raising chickens in your backyard. I would like to learn how to raise chickens in my backyard. So he teaches his neighbor how to raise chickens in his backyard. And then his whole community started to ask questions, and he started to do a community meetup where his neighborhood would get together on a regular basis talking about this backyard poultry thing. So it starts to become really successful in this area. And he's like, well, maybe this could actually be a thing. So he goes to a website called meetup.org and he puts his information out there, and he says, if ever anybody wants to learn about raising chickens in your backyard, I will come and I'll do a little meetup. And he starts getting invited to locations all over the United States and teaching people how to raise chickens in your backyard. So it actually becomes a thing. And he says, well, maybe this could be my thing. Maybe this is something that I actually create a content platform around. So he creates a website. Here's this website, thechickenwhisperer.com. You can see he's holding a very healthy chicken. Things are going very, very well. It's working. And he says, well, how do we get how do we get this information out to more people? So he starts a radio show. Here's the Chicken Whisperer radio show, and you can see it 4 times a week. He has a radio show, and you can see on Monday you've got Peter Brown, the chicken doctor. So over the weekend, if your chickens got sick, you've got Peter Brown that starts to help you with your chickens. Believe it or not, 30,000 weekly listeners to this radio show. So he really builds an amazing content platform, almost like a media company, just around this very small niche of backyard poultry. So he's very, very successful. And I'm going to talk more about Andy Schneider's content platform as we get into diversification, but I wanted to sort of break down what Andy's sweet spot was. So on the one side, his passion is teaching. As you can tell, he loves to teach. He'll teach anything to anyone. That's something he's super passionate about. He could build his sweet spot on the one side around that. And on the other side, what's his authority area? He became the leading expert in the world, possibly, on the idea of backyard poultry. Let me give you another example. Let's say that we were targeting small business owner farmers, and that was the audience that we're trying to target. Let's say on the one side, we're looking at a customer pain point where, what are the operational challenges on the farm? How do I use the right technology? How do I hire the right people? So that's on the one side from a customer pain point. And on the other side, let's say that you as a company know more about agriculture and technology than any company in the world. And if you can think of what this is a real life case study, and who would this be? And this is John Deere. John Deere started their Content Inc. model in 1895 with a content brand called The Furrow Magazine. And if you said, Joe, what's the leading media company in the farming agricultural industry? I would say it's not actually a media company. It's John Deere, 1.5 million subscribers, 40 countries, 14 different languages. And they've been doing this for over 120 years now. And over that time, over the 100, we talked to the team quite extensively at John Deere. And over the 120 years, we asked them, well, how many times do you insert your product or service into the content itself? And what they told us was it was only about 15 to 20 times over the 120 years that they insert their own products and services into the content. So that's what I'm talking about, really being focused on the needs of the audience and thinking about yourself more like a media company instead of just always trying to do the bait and switch and trying to say, hey, buy our product or service. You have to keep your product pitches outside of the content and really focus on education and entertainment in the content itself. So that's the sweet spot, and I want you to think about, you probably already have your sweet spot and sort of understand what that could be. But let's move on to the content tilts now as you go through. So you have your sweet spot, and then the content tilt might be the most important of the 6 steps. So let me give you an example of the content tilt, and then I'll break it down exactly what it is. So let's look at Anne Reardon. Anne Reardon from Sydney, Australia, is known as the baking queen of Sydney, Australia. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she actually wanted to start a food blog, a food video blog, and she started it on YouTube. And she was super excited to get 100 YouTube subscribers in January 2012. As you can see right now, she has over 2.5 million subscribers, so it's really, really working well. Well, what did Anne do? As you can see, here's her YouTube page. How to Cook That.net is her content brand, so that's what she went out with. And I want you to think about it because it's really, really important. Everyone basically stops at the sweet spot in the story we want to tell. What we've got to figure out is, how do we find a competitive area that has little competition on the web, so we actually have an opportunity to break through all the clutter, and we tilt that content a little bit where we can tell a differentiated story. If we're not telling a different story, there's no way we're going to break through all the clutter around that. So think about all the different food blogs and video blogs. Probably since I've been talking for the last 5 minutes, there's probably been 1 million posts on the web about food and recipes and whatnot. So how does Anne Reardon, with very few resources, how is she able to break through all that clutter and build an audience? Well, she did things like, how do I take 5 pounds of Snickers bars and put them into a cake? I don't know if that looks good, but there it is right there. But she's thinking about these impossible types of recipes, or maybe you've seen this one. This is the Instagram replica cake. So she said, how do I create a perfect replica of an Instagram logo and put it into a cake? And this one went super, super viral. Very, very successful for her. So if you think about the types of things that she's creating content around, Yes, she has her sweet spot. She's passionate about education. She's a qualified dietitian or food scientist, but it's the content tilt that makes all the difference. And she's focusing on impossible food creations. So every time somebody sees a piece of her content, she wants them to think, wow, that's impossible. How did Ann do that? So that's how she's telling her differentiated story. And that's why it's so critical to figure out what your different story is. Now, how do we do this? How do you do this and find out what your different story is? Now, what do all media companies do that you probably don't do with your content? And I've been on about 35 to 40 different media launches of magazines and newsletters and content platforms, and everyone starts with an editorial mission statement. And no businesses do this. No businesses start with an editorial mission statement. So I want you to create what we would call for you your content marketing mission statement. I'm going to go through a couple of examples so you can see how this absolutely works. Let's start with this is a manufacturer, small mid-sized manufacturer out of New York called Indium Corporation, and they manufacture industrial soldering equipment. So first of all, I'm going to stop here. If you think that you have boring information to talk about, nothing is boring if you're focusing on the right audience with the right information. So they're focusing on industrial soldering equipment, and they wanted to start focusing on this niche and becoming a leading expert in industrial soldering equipment. So they started a blog in 2005. And within 18 months, they saw a 600% increase in qualified leads. But they began this whole process with a content marketing mission statement. And here it is. And I simplified this a little bit for you, but let's go through it. So basically helping engineers answer the most challenging industrial soldering questions. They're talking to one audience at a time, and that's key. You cannot talk to multiple audiences. They're talking to engineers. They're not talking to plant managers. They're not talking to chief financial officers. They're just talking to engineers. What are they trying to do? What's the outcome for that audience? Help them answer the most challenging industrial soldering questions. They're not talking about siding. They're not talking about ball bearings. They're just talking about this. This is an area completely focused on the audience where they can actually be the leading expert in the world and cut through all the clutter. Let me give you another example. Then we're going to break this apart so that you can actually do this yourself with your team. So this is one of Darren Rouse's sites from Australia, Digital Photography School. And if you go to Digital Photography School About Us, their About Us page, you'll see that they've got their content marketing mission statement right there. Welcome to Digital Photography School, a website, simple tips to help digital camera owners get the most out of their cameras. There's 3 parts. So here's the 3 parts you're going to want to focus on. First, who's your core target audience? In this case, you're focusing on digital camera owners. 2, what are we going to deliver? Simple tips. We're not talking about real long form 2,000-word articles. We're talking about very simple tips that they can what? 3, what's their outcome? We're really focusing on every piece of content, what the audience can get out of this. And in this case, get more out of their cameras. So very, very simple. And if you want a little trick, if you have an editorial calendar, if let's say that you have your editorial calendar in some kind of spreadsheet and you say, okay, here's my keyword phrases, here's the approvals, here's go all the way through to, is it a blog, is it a white paper, what is it? I want you to add audience outcome to your editorial calendar. And so for every piece of content, you have an idea of what that audience is trying to get out of that content. Is it to help them live a better life in some way, get a better job? What is that? And if you focus on that for every piece of content, that will help you immediately in the editorial process, because the person that's creating the raw content will understand what the audience is supposed to get out of that individual piece of content. So at some point after this, you can get together with your team, and whatever you're trying to do, really figure out what is your mission statement. To find that audience, one audience, can only be one. If you have it 2 or 3 audiences, you'll never be relevant enough. You've got to focus on just one audience. 2, what are you going to deliver? What are those useful tips that you're going to deliver as entertaining tips? What kind of content is it? And then what is the outcome? What's the audience trying to get out of it? So that's a really good thing, really good approach here to figure out how you're going to tell a differentiated story and build your content tilt. Now the first 2, we haven't done any content. You haven't created any content at this point. That's just all strategy. Now we're getting into the part about building the base, about deciding where we're going to create this content and on what platform. And actually, was amazing. And every case study we looked at in the book, and if you look at every major media company on the planet, from the New York Times to the Financial Times to ESPN, they all do the same thing, absolutely the same thing, which is amazing because we always complicate it. We're like, oh, we want to tell this story, and we go and we plaster it all over the web. That's actually not a system and an approach that works. This is what works. So we focus on these 4 things. First of all, one content type for the most part. Is it textual plus images? Is it audio content? Is it video content in some way? One main platform. Is it my blog or website? Is it YouTube? Is it iTunes? Consistently delivering. So let's say that you have a blog and you say, oh, I'm going to blog 2 times a week. I say, no, you're not. You're going to blog once on Monday and you're going to deliver at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to deliver it once on Thursday and deliver that at 7 o'clock in the morning. Just like a media company, just like a newspaper, you would always deliver on time and create that promise with your customers around the content you're delivering, and then long period of time. It takes time to do this, folks. If we look at the average of from starting the content to monetization, to actually making money off of it, the average is between 15 and 18 months. For us at Content Marketing Institute, it took us about 24 months. So if you say, Joe, I have 6 months, I want to make this happen, can I do it? I'm going to say probably not. It's going to take you much more than to go buy advertising, go interrupt people. Don't do a Content Inc. Don't do a content marketing approach. It takes time to build a loyal audience. So I want you to make sure that you bake in patience into making this happen. Let me give you some cases around this so you can understand. So here's Copyblogger. Copyblogger was started in 2006 by Brian Clark. Brian Clark was focusing on content, if you can see here, around things like smarter landing pages, online copywriting tips, search engine optimization tips. And every day, 5 days a week, he would create a blog post. He would do that with text and images on his own blog platform, consistently delivering every day for 5 days a week over time. He did this for 19 months straight before he monetized the platform. Now, Copyblogger is one of the fastest growing software as a service companies in the world, and they've done this really well. But this is just a very simple system following the model that we just talked about. Let's look at an example from Denmark. Here's Jyske Bank. Jyske Bank is one of the largest banks in Denmark. They actually were spending quite a bit of money on sponsorship. They were sponsoring soccer tournaments, spending $2 to $3 million a year on soccer tournaments, and they said, you know, what are we getting out of it? We don't know. Can we build our own audience? And they said, let's take that money and actually build Jyske Bank Television. So they built their own television network. Believe it or not, it's a bank. They have a tagline that says, we're the only media company with its own bank. I absolutely love that. But they took them a couple years to really get this going. It was video content on their own platform. They delivered this every day over time, and it took them about 2 years to get this going. And what was amazing, what happened is, as they built this audience that was so valuable, they started to get those same organizers of the soccer tournament coming to them and say, hey, would you come and be a media partner of ours? Would you come and cover our soccer events, and we'll give you some of the same benefits you had before, but we're not going to charge you money. Amazing. Why? Because that soccer tournament, that organizer wanted to reach their audience, and they were building an amazing audience. And this is the bank. And by the way, that picture is of the bank. That's inside the bank itself at Jyske Bank. So really, really super successful. One of the greatest media companies in Denmark happens to be a bank. Here's a podcast example. John Lee Dumas started Entrepreneur on Fire. He basically started, focusing on entrepreneurs and how they could be more successful, but he did it through audio content, leveraging iTunes as the platform, delivered a podcast every day. He delivers a podcast at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time every day that goes out, and it took him 9 months, which is the shortest case to monetization that we have covered in the book Content Inc. And he was able to be very, very successful. Now he's a multimillionaire. He's doing really well. He's focusing on his 200,000 plus iTunes subscribers, converting those into email subscribers, millions of downloads, super successful. But in every case, it was the same formula. One content type, one platform, consistently delivered over time. It generally takes over 12 months. That's why you have to build in patience, and you have to set the right expectations in your organization to really make this work. Now, really good exercise to do, because if you're like most companies, you're creating content in all kinds of different channels. If you look at one audience, the average, according to our research for a large enterprise, if you're talking to one audience, you deliver content in 13 to 15 different ways to that content, whether that's on Facebook or Twitter, or you have an e-newsletter or a white paper series or webinar series or whatever. So you're creating lots of different things, and maybe there's an opportunity to do less and to really focus on what we just talked about with this platform model. So a good exercise is take a piece of paper and put why question mark at the top of the page, and on the left-hand side of the page, list all the different ways you communicate with that audience, all the way down, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and e-newsletters and everything, and figure out why you're doing it. What is the corporate objective there? Are you trying to drive sales? Are you trying to save money in some way? Are you trying to create more loyal customers? Really put that down. And we've done this hundreds of times for different customers, and not anyone that I've ever worked with was able to fill all the way down and understand the clear why for they're doing each one of these. Sometimes, hey, we're just doing a blog because we wanted to do a blog. We thought it was something we should do. Why do you as a B2B company have a Facebook page? Really figure out why you're doing that, because you probably want to cut back some of these so you can take some of those resources and really focus on being a master at one of these channels and not just a jack of all trades, just creating content and putting it anywhere you think you need to put it. All right, so we created the strategy, the sweet spot, the content tilt. Now we built the base. Now it's time to harvest the audience and really build an asset of subscribers to your content. Now let's talk about social media a little bit, so you're going to understand where we want to actually build the audience and what we want to focus on as our key metrics. So let's look at Cisco Systems. Cisco Systems, large technology companies, one of the largest technology companies in the world. And if you see here, they have got 737,000 people that like this page. So let's say the social media manager, director, wants to write an organic post and put that post in here and click submit. Of the 737,000, as a percentage of people, how many would actually see an organic post on Facebook? It's actually less than 1%. So we have what we feel is an audience of over 700,000 people, but less than 1% are going to see any of those updates. Now, it didn't always used to be the case. Facebook used to allow brands to communicate more, but they wanted to actually make money. So they stopped doing this. They changed the rules. And that's kind of the point of this section is that you could try to create your audience on a social media platform that you don't own, but you don't control it. You don't control how they change the algorithms and what they do. So we've got to figure out, how do we get more control when we do want to build an audience? Look at Google Plus, right? Google doesn't even know what they're doing with Google Plus. So Starbucks has 3 million followers on Google Plus, and I don't even know if they're worth anything. And we spent millions of dollars building that audience, and maybe it's not worth anything. So I just want you to think that it's not, I love social media, absolutely leverage social media, but the point is that you don't have any control. You should just plan on getting up in the morning knowing that all your communication abilities in those platforms may go away at some point. So what do we do? What do we focus on? And I want you to focus on subscribers, specifically email subscribers, as a key metric to making this happen. Let's go back to Copyblogger, right? How did Copyblogger make this thing work? Well, they did the Copyblogger, Brian Clark did 19 months of blogging, text about this online copywriting niche over time, and they built over that time over 200,000 email subscribers. And 99% of their revenue comes in from those email subscribers. That's how they monetize it. So just think about that kind of thing. So here's a financial example. This is a print example. Here's Think Money Magazine, which is a content brand from financial services company TD Ameritrade. And they didn't know if they wanted to do this anymore. This is a print publication. It's very hard to show return for a print publication. They didn't know if they were going to get the data, but the content champion stuck with it in the organization and said, we just need more time. Is this going to work? And it took them a couple years to get this data. And this Think Money Magazine goes to traders that trade often. So they trade 50, 100, 500, 1,000 times a day. And they found out that those traders that subscribe to this print magazine end up trading 5 times more than those that don't. So think about that. If they, as a subscriber, they trade 50 times, they might end up trading 250 times. That's amazing return on investment for something like that. And we have more control over our print subscriber data. So here's my very sophisticated yay boo scale for subscriber hierarchy. And if you look at everything on the left-hand side of the page, by the way, they're all good. All these things are good. All these connections, all these subscribers, all these followers are all good. The problem is that we have more control over some and less control over others. So see Facebook down there at the bottom, we have very little control in how we communicate with our audience. Let's look at YouTube. Let's say you have a YouTube you start a YouTube page, you have some videos, you have a customer or an audience member that subscribes to that, and you're thinking, great, the next time they go to YouTube, they're going to see my stuff in their feed. Well, not necessarily. YouTube might decide, well, we get more engagement off of Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or Ellen, and that's better than showing them your video because they want to monetize their advertising as they go. So even though you get a subscriber on those platforms, it doesn't mean that that subscriber is going to see it. So we want to try to move up as often as possible through all these different platforms into print and email subscribers, email at the top where we actually have the most control over our communications. But you might be thinking, Joe, come on, email's dead. I mean, emails, it's not something we could actually use. Well, let's look at BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed, valued at a multi-billion-dollar company now. You might say, well, they built their whole valuation on social media. Well, you might be right, where they have huge Facebook following, huge Twitter following, huge Snapchat following. But I want you to, if you get a chance to engage in any BuzzFeed content, I want you to start following the breadcrumbs as to where all these calls to action go. And the calls to action go to this page, newsletter signups. And you can see you can actually get a newsletter just for cats one time a week. Unbelievable, right? But why are they trying to convert their Facebook audience, their Twitter audience, their Snapchat audience into email? It's because less and less of the content they're creating on those platforms is breaking through because Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, they're changing their algorithms on a daily basis. So BuzzFeed's freaking out right now because they have all their audience assets in the platforms that they don't control. So BuzzFeed is actually trying to bring this over and get more and more people to sign up for email. Unbelievable, right? So how do you do this? Let's look at John Lee Dumas. So John Lee Dumas, the Entrepreneur on Fire example, he has hundreds of thousands of iTunes subscribers, but iTunes doesn't give us the data over who our subscribers are. So he creates all these calls to action on his podcast to get them to go to his website and sign up and join this community called Fire Nation, where he gives all these amazing tools and resources and a roadmap so people can sign up. And this is his homepage. This is what you'd see. So you can't even get to the homepage and the other documentation until you at least see this. And this is important because 80% of the people that go to your website might never come back again. So we want to get these subscribers as often as possible. So, and we've done the same thing at Content Marketing Institute. This is a popover we use. It's called Pippity.com. It integrates with WordPress, and I actually didn't want to do this at first. So, by the way, our homepage is right, our content is right behind this. So if you go to our page and you'll start looking at some of the content, as you get through some of the content, you'll see this popover come up. It's not blocked by ad blockers as of yet. And I didn't want to do this because I'm like, no, we want to give our content away for free. We don't want to force people to sign up, and we absolutely don't. But again, we want to make sure that we get an opportunity to communicate and build a relationship with that audience over time. So we need to get their email. So we want to put up here, exchange of value, get them this exclusive workbook for free in exchange for their data. And we looked at the team wanted to do it, and I said, okay, let's test it. And we tested it out, and we found out that 65% of our daily subscribers come in through this popover form. Amazing, right? I was like, wow, this is fantastic. I really like this, but we've got to follow it through the buyer's journey. And we find out after 9 to 12 months, this was generally our buyer's journey, we're a B2B company, that the majority of these people become some of our best customers. So it's really, really amazing how this works out, but we really have to focus on getting email addresses. Now, you might also think, if you're like me, you get up in the morning and you do your mass deletion of all the spam that came in overnight from your email, but you keep those one or two every time, right? That's really good. That's really amazing. That's really helpful. That's what you have to be. So if you're sending out email and e-newsletters right now that aren't really great, aren't amazing, aren't incredibly helpful, you've got to change that. You have to have an amazing e-newsletter. You have to have something that they don't delete, that they don't think is spam, that they actually want to engage in. And then you also have to have some kind of exchange of value, some ebook, some research report, some tool that they'll be able to give you the right email information so that you can actually send them an e-newsletter on an ongoing basis so that you can monetize this. So really, really important as we do this. So that's how a lot of these very successful content in companies, they're forming their whole basis for monetization. And we'll talk about monetization in a little bit, but around email subscribers. Okay. We found the sweet spot, identified the content tilt where we're different. We built the base. We're harvested the audience through email subscribers. Now we diversify. So now we can go into other channels and actually diversify the platforms. Now for us, this is data from Content Marketing Institute. We found out that there's really a rule of 3 for us. So our magic number is 3, where our best customers are engaged in 3 different subscription opportunities. You can see this to the right. So these are all the people on the right that come to our big event every September, Content Marketing World. Well, first we get them to sign up through our email newsletter, and then we want them to sign up to at least 2 other things, maybe our magazine, print magazine chief content officer. Maybe we want them to sign up to This Old Marketing podcast. Maybe we want them to sign up to our online training courses, our weekly Twitter chats on Tuesday, whatever the case is. We want them to sign up and get that because we don't want to sell them right away. We want to build a relationship with them over time. We talk about being the octopus. How do we take all of our legs of content and we sort of wrap them in content love, if you will, to build that loyal relationship over time? And that's why we diversify, and that's why media companies diversify. Most media companies start off very simply, just like we talked about. Like the Huffington Post. Huffington Post just started out with a blog, but now they have events, and now they have videos, and now they have major social media channels, but they started off with just a blog. Let's go back to our friend Andy Schneider, the Chicken Whisperer. So if you remember, Andy Schneider started with his main platform with the podcast radio show, audio. Over time built up to 30,000 weekly listeners. Then he starts to diversify. So on the right, of course, he builds the leading magazine in the industry, the Chicken Whisperer magazine, that you have to get, that's going successfully, really successful for Andy Schneider. And then, of course, on the left-hand side, it's the ultimate guide to keeping chickens in your backyard, everything you need to know. #1 in its category on Amazon. There's only 2 in the category, but it is the #1 in the category. But you can see how once you build the platform, then we can diversify into other ways to reach our audience. Let's look at Moz. Rand Fishkin's company, Moz, used to be called SEO Moz. They were just a consulting company for search engine optimization for so long. Then they started to say, okay, well, how do they start? They started with regular blogs every day, and they built over 100,000 subscribers, and it really worked well for them. And then once they built those 100,000 subscribers and started to monetize those, then they started Whiteboard Friday. That's Rand Fishkin with his cookies there. Started a video every Friday, and it's a must see if you're into search engine optimization. And then he started their own in-person event, MozCon, which is every year. So you can see it could be print, it could be in person, it could be diversify in many, many different ways. But you can see how some of these major fast-growing companies are doing this. And here's Moz's financials. So wouldn't we all want to have this? And what we found out is that Content Inc. companies grow faster. So you can start it. And when they were a consulting company in 2007, 450,000. That's great for a small company, but you can see how fast they grew. How do they grow so fast? Because we have the audience. Moz had that audience of 100,000 or more that already knows, likes, and trusts them, and they're more willing to buy from them ongoing. So really, really amazing how we see that happening over time. And we've done the same thing at Content Marketing Institute. For the first 24 months, all we did was blogging. And then we built that audience. Our minimum viable audience was 10,000 email subscribers. We got to that level, and then we diversified into Content Marketing World, our annual event, Chief Content Officer, our bi-monthly magazine, our This Old Marketing podcast, on and on and on. So that's diversification. And now the last level, you're probably saying, okay, well, Joe, how do we monetize this thing? How do we actually make money off of this thing? And here's the key question that you have to think about once you build this audience. So once you build an audience, let's say of email subscribers, we just look at what the difference is between those email subscribers, that audience, in between what our customers, how do our customers act different? The people that get our content versus the people that don't get our content, how do they act different? Do they buy more? Do they stay longer as customers? Do they close faster? It's actually, you don't need a lot of technology to do this. You could just take your email subscription list and then layer that over your customer relationship management database and see what they actually do different. And it's amazing to see what the changes are as we go. Like for us, we monetize through advertising, sponsorship, and event registrations. But you could do it through increased product sales for more loyal customers, data, craftrecipes.com is all a data play. so they can get first-party data about what their customers are interested in from a content standpoint, so they can figure out, are they going to launch new products around red velvet or pumpkin spice or whatever the case is. So there's lots of different ways to monetizing depending on what your overall goals for, right? How did Copyblogger do it? They did it by selling products, selling more products and services. They now have SEO products, content management system products that they sell to their 200,000 plus email subscribers as they go. How did Think Money Magazine do it? They did it by creating better customers. Customers that were trading 50, 100, 150 times are now trading 500, 1,000 times, 1,500 times. They've created better customers, more loyal customers, retain those customers more over time. Here's a great case study. You could talk about revenue ripples, unexpected things that happen. River Pools and Spas in 2008, they basically install and sell fiberglass pools, and in 2008, they were really hurting themselves because they were about ready to go bankrupt. They're going out of business. They were the 5th in their marketplace. They were really didn't even know if they were going to make it at all. And they said, well, what could they do, being the 5th largest company in their little area of Virginia in the States? And they said, well, I don't want to close down. Marcus Sheridan, the CEO, didn't want to close down, and said, well, let's create a blog. So they created what they thought was the most educational swimming pool blog in the country, and they delivered 3 blog posts a week, ongoing, answering their customers' questions over time. And they became so successful that all they did differently was the blog over that time. And in 2011, they sold and installed more fiberglass swimming pools than any company in North America. And all they did differently was they created this amazing content platform following the Content Inc. model around swimming pools. Now let's talk about revenue ripples, unexpected things. They become a worldwide brand, maybe one of the most recognizable worldwide brands around swimming pools. River Pools has, and they've been able to now manufacture. Now they're in the manufacturing business, and they manufacture pools as well, and they become this really juggernaut of a company. But they would never have been able to do that if they didn't build that Content Inc. platform to start with. So it's some of the things that you just never expect would happen because you build this audience over time, and then you're able to monetize that in different ways. So I want you to think about creating value for your audience before you extract the value. Don't get the lead and don't try to sell them immediately. Really try to focus on how you can build that loyal relationship over time, then diversify that using the Content Inc. model. And if you're really going to make this work, you have to focus on a content niche or niche that you can actually be the leading expert in the world on something. And once you build that loyal audience, it always leads to revenue. You just have to have the patience to do that when you follow the model. So here's your takeaways. Find the niche where you can actually be the leading expert in the world. Develop your content marketing mission statement. If you don't have one, get one. Build that base. How do you do that? One content type, one content channel, platform, deliver consistently over time. Do that little exercise about why you use the different channels. Be careful about building your house on rented land. That's the whole social media thing. We definitely want to use social media, but we've got to be careful. We don't control any of that. What do we want to do? Build an audience then of opt-in subscribers. To do that, we need an amazing e-newsletter and a remarkable download. Then we diversify, and whatever the number is for you. For us at Content Marketing Institute, it's 3. Is it 2? Is it 4? What is it for you? And then we figure out what those subscribers do differently so that we can profit from it. And it's a win-win. The audience gets this great information. We get to profit as a company. And then, of course, we want to be significantly patient as this goes. So I hope you got at least one thing out of this presentation. Maybe you got 2, and I've exceeded your expectations as we go. Couple things just to remind you on Content Marketing World, our big event every year, September 6th through 9th in Cleveland, Ohio. Definitely hope to see you there. We've got definitely a lot of group. I think we're expecting over 4,000 delegates from 60 countries. It's the largest content marketing event on the planet. And then this last thing, if you have people in your organization that don't get content marketing and you can't sell, you can't get the buy-in, this is our documentary that we made. We took a lot of care and feeding into this. It's called The Story of Content, Rise of the New Marketing. You can go to Amazon Prime or go to thestoryofcontent.com and get this information. It's 43 minutes long. I guarantee you, if you have executives in your organization that don't get content marketing, when they see this, I believe they will get it once you end up showing that to them. So there's more information about the book. You can contact me directly at joe@contentinstitute.com. I'm at Joe Polizzi on Twitter. Thank you so much for being a part of this presentation. I hope you got something out of it and really super appreciate your time. Thank you so much and have a great, great day.